Every week on Patreon, there is a podcast called Mad Dog Bites, and it's with Mad Dog Martin Allen, former West Ham player. I was doing it this week because Dave Walker, who usually does a show with X, WHU employee, is on holiday. So I stepped in this week, which is fine. I've done it a few times. And I'll tell you what, it was really interesting this week because Martin Allen had some very interesting thoughts on the David Moyes situation. Now, David Moyes' position has been a constant source for news all season, isn't it? It's been something we've discussed so many times to a point where really I got a bit tired of talking about it. But at the end of the day, it's still a topic and it's still going to be up for debate at the end of the season. If we win the Europa Conference League, even if we don't win it, whatever. Is he going to be staying? Does he deserve to stay on? All these things. We've all got our opinions on it. I'm still a little bit on the fence. I'm going to be honest. I do sort of tend to flip-flop a little bit around this subject. Sometimes I'm quite adamant. I want to see him gone. And the other times I do think, well, look, if he wins this trophy, I think he's probably earned the right to stay on for another season. I do think that's the case. If he doesn't win it, I'm not sure. I think we have to really look at it because you have to look at the season as a whole. And at the end of the day, if we're going to sacrifice a bad Premier League, have a bad season in the Premier League, but then win a trophy out of it, especially in Europe, and get us European football again, it's a pill you can swallow, I find. So look, it's up for debate. However, Martin Allen had some very interesting views on this. And he said he believes this is going to happen, that David Moyes will leave the club this summer, regardless of the outcome of the final. And he had some really interesting points on this. And the reason being, he believes that basically, and we're going to put an article on this very soon. In fact, when this comes out, the article will be on the westhamway.com. So go and check it out because it's worth reading, because we're going to talk. I'll give you more quotes on that than I will here because I haven't got it in front of me about exactly what he said. But basically, this isn't just Martin Allen's thought of what should happen. He believes this is going to happen. He believes David Moyes will leave the football club this summer. Now, Martin's belief is that basically that the fans, or as a general, not just picking on people, but just as a general, we've had it very good with David Moyes. We've had it very good since he's come back to the club. He kept the club up from relegation. He's got 2 top 7 finishes in the Premier League, back-to-back European qualifications, might even be a third, and has got us to a semi-final and now a final. You look at this evidence, okay? You look at that body of evidence and you go, wow. I mean, and I've said this a few times now, I'm eternally grateful for David Moyes because ultimately he's given me and us the best period as being a West Ham fan. I mean, I know there's people that are a little bit older possibly and say, well, actually, no, we had it good in the mid-80s. Unfortunately, I was born that year, so I didn't quite enjoy it the same. But basically, what he's saying is that we've had it so good, and we're being a little bit ungrateful to David Moyes. He reverts back, actually, he highlighted what happened at the Fulham away game. If you remember, that was the game where there was the banner of the Moyes out. We did a video on it saying that basically David Moyes had lost the fans. You can go back and watch that, and we talk about what actually happened in more detail. But Martin Allen was there, and he described the scene, actually. I wasn't at the game, but he described the scene of what happened and basically explained what happened at the end of the match. So David Moyes was getting chance throughout the game. We did win that game 1-0, by the way, and that was I think it was an own goal. It might have gone down to a Bowen goal. I can't quite remember off the top of my head, but yeah, we won the game 1-0. And when David Moyes was walking off the pitch, he looked over at the fans and just walked past and looked quite angry. Well, basically looked a bit hurt of what was happening. So the fans, the banner was out. There was chance if you don't know what you're doing. Now, Martin Allen's view is that's made his mind up in that he can leave this club with his head held high, whether he wins the trophy or not. Of course he wants to win the trophy. Of course he does. But basically, he's done enough in his time at West Ham to warrant the fact he's a good manager. He knows what he's doing. And that basically fans said to have been a little bit ungrateful. That, we've got it very good, really. We've had a decent few years, and probably the best we've experienced. And we're now becoming a bit, because of the season we've had, we've turned on Moyes. Now, I slightly disagree with that. I don't think that's quite the case, that we've all just turned on Moyes and been horrible. I don't think that's the case. I was on a podcast the other day explaining to some other fans about it, and I've said, look, it's not the case that I mean, this is me personally. I don't hate David Moyes. I'm eternally grateful for David Moyes. I think, for what he's done for our football club. It was more, and I think that the fans just feel that the club, we want to see a little bit more expansive football, don't we? Take the game to teams sometimes. Stop just sitting back. But that is David Moyes' style. That is his best style. He's tried to change it, hasn't he? He has done it. To his credit, he has tried to change things, and it hasn't worked. It just hasn't worked. It's why we're in such a dire situation this season. Why we've been down the bottom trying to fight for survival, because we've been suffering so badly at the beginning of the season, trying to adopt this new style that David Moyes simply can't do. He's not able to do it. And look, go back to what you're good at, and that's what he's done. The interesting thing is, well, first of all, I'd like to get the fans' opinion on this one, okay? What's your feelings? Do you think David Moyes will walk away from this job at the end of the season? Let's just say he wins the Conference League. Will he walk away? Will he go away? Because let's be honest, if he wins that Conference League, David Moyes will be regarded as a legend at West Ham. Fact. Like, I mean, I don't care what anyone says. For a manager to come into this football club and lift a European trophy, considering the fact we've not won one since 1965, was it the last time we won a European trophy? I didn't win a last major trophy since 1980. It's 43 years. For him to come into this football club, do that, and win a trophy, gets back into Europe. I mean, really, the man should have a statue. I mean, really, he's been that impressive for the football club. That's my feeling, but I don't think you can begrudge him any of that status. He deserves that. Whether he loses it, if he loses it, that's different, because obviously, runner-up is still a wonderful achievement to say that you've gone that way. But come on, we've got to get that greatness. You need to see a trophy, in my opinion. Now, where do we stand on this? Where do we stand as fans on this position of David Moyes? It's going to be up for debate anyway this summer. I don't want to go into too much, but I'd like to know what your feelings are on particularly on what Martin Allen's saying. Martin Allen believes David Moyes will leave this football club at the end of the season. He will go, regardless of what happens. Now, that is interesting. That's a very interesting take on it. My feeling is he will stay. I think he will stay. I don't think David Moyes will be replaced. I think even if we lose the final, I think the club will keep him on. I believe, from what we've hearing from ex-WHU employee previously, is the club feel that he's warranted it by turning the season around effectively by this. But we've not gone down. Look, they've got a point, okay? It wasn't long ago we were in dire straits. We were looking at relegation. And let's be honest, we stayed up pretty comfortably in the end. I mean, pretty much with a month to go to the end of the season, we were all going, we were safe. I've reported it on here. We'd said it for we're comfortably safe. And we stayed up with 6 points to spare. And we could have got more, let's be honest. We could have probably pushed a bit further, but we didn't. Because we've got bigger fish to fry. We've got the Europa Conference League final, which we're all buzzing for. But where do you stand? Do you think David Moyes will walk at the end of the season? And also, I'd like to know what's your feeling on in terms of his legacy of his football club, because it's very interesting. Now, if David Moyes does leave, if David Moyes' mindset is, you know what, I'm going to go out on a high and leave, I mean, really, his stock would be very high. I mean, there'd be a lot of clubs looking at him, and that's one thing actually we talked about on the podcast with Martin and X, was that, and this was X's point, was that if David Moyes does, let's just imagine David Moyes decides to leave and we go, yeah, brilliant, we're going to get a new manager in. Let's be honest, that's a gamble. Whoever you go for, it's a gamble. Let's say it's a Michael Carrick. We get Michael Carrick into the football club. He's a young manager, great, all these things. Let's just say David Moyes goes to, I don't know, Everton, go back to Everton, and suddenly flies up the table, gets them back into Europe, and we're struggling. That could happen, it's one of those things. I think we just got to be a little bit careful. I know it's the old cliche, but you've got to be careful what you wish for. And I do think we do need to be a little bit like that with David Moyes. I don't think we should just turn our nose up at the guy. That's my feeling on it. Okay, my conclusion of this is that at this juncture, I think David Moyes will stay on. I do think he'll be our manager. I don't believe that he'll walk away from this job. I think he realises it's a good job for him. He fits the club well. He's in London. This is a decent job for him. I don't think he'd want to go to an Everton at the moment and pick up a mess. I can't see it. I think he knows he's got something good going on, especially if we win that trophy, because he's got European football waiting for him again. I don't think he'd turn that down. I really don't. And I just don't get that feeling from David Moyes. Bearing in mind, if you look at his career, apart from being dismissed at jobs, he's stayed on. He stayed at Everton for 11 years. That's my feeling on it. But it is very interesting that Martin's take on how he sees it, and who knows, he could be right. And I'd really like to know your thoughts on this, because according to Martin, David Moyes is on his way.